Welcome to The Gist with Mo45673. Freedom, the Underground Railroad. In this game, you will be trying to get your slaves from the plantations in the south all the way up to Canada in the north. There is Canada. You have a certain number of slaves you have to get to Canada before the game ends. You also have a certain amount of slaves that you need to get to Canada. That you cannot have lost before the game ends. So this is for one player, and you need to get 5 slaves freed into Canada. I right now, I've played about 4 turns of the game. I right now have 3 slaves lost. At the top there of these columns here, you can see that there are these tokens. These are called support tokens. As you can see, I have already gotten the first support token, which cost me $10, which is quite expensive in this game. The other game-winning condition is that you must have the required number of slaves, which scales based on the number of players. But you must have the required number of slaves, in this case 1 player, so it's 5, plus all the support tokens from all 3 periods of time. The other thing is, based on the number of players, there will be more support tokens. In the 1-player game, there's only 1 per period, but in the 2-player game, there are more, and etc. Over here, you will see the slave market cards. These act as the game timer, amongst other things. There are 8 cards, and they scale for players. So as you can see here, this is for 1 and 3 players, 1 and 2 player, and this card is only used in the 1-player game. And as you can see, I have already played through a few rounds of this game. There are 2 defeat conditions. One is if you don't win before the end of round 8, and the other is if you have too many slaves lost. In the 1-player game, you can have 12 slaves lost, but if you get 13 lost slaves, you lose the game instantly. To win the game, you need to get the required amount of slaves into Canada. In the 1-player game, it's 5. And if we look up here, you can see I've gotten 1 slave into Canada, all the way up there. He's happily living his life as a free man. What you're trying to do is you're trying to move your slaves all around the board, evading these slave catchers, who will move based off of how your slaves move. For example, if I move this guy here, this slave over here, what's going to happen is that's going to trigger every slave on his path, and they will move 1 location closer to him. So he would go here, and he would actually capture this slave. When a slave is captured, they go to the slave market, not to the lost slave part at the top. So basically, I don't want to move this guy. Additionally, some spots give you money. So this will give you $2. Some spots will trigger 2. So for example, over here, you will trigger the purple and the blue slave catcher. And in New York up here, you will trigger the brown and the blue slave catcher. Similarly, on this spot, the brown and the orange, who's underneath this guy, slave catcher. Near the end of every phase, you are going to take the slaves in the bottommost market, and you're going to take those slaves and put them in the plantations. If you have no room left in your plantations, all the overflow slaves are going to go to your lost card at the top right. So while getting slaves into Canada is relatively easy in this game, keeping your plantations constantly emptying is very difficult, as you have to get them into empty areas such as this. So you have to keep these guys moving without triggering the slave catchers too much, or you will basically lose the game. Play a sample game round. The first phase of each round is you roll these dice. These tell you how the slave catchers, one slave catcher will move each round randomly. The rest of the game, you can predict how they move thanks to, they react to how your slaves are moving. But this keeps it switched up a little bit, and I think it's an ingenious mechanic because it's only one slave catcher, but it's really ingenious because it really switches it up and keeps you guessing. Now, this die roll means that none of them move. This is like a get out of jail free card, I guess. But let's just show you what happens if I would actually roll a real slave catcher. So here's one, and he is going to follow the white arrows as opposed to the black arrows twice. So this is what happens. Brown slave catcher, he is on the brown track, follows 2 white arrows. 1, 2. And this poor soul is now captured. So we take him and we put him on the lowest slave market card. So at the next slave market phase, all these will be sent to the nearest plantation. Any that don't fit, get lost. Got it? Good. So there are 6 roles in the game, and you get 1 per player, 1 per character. And they have special actions, each of them. These are player aids, which they're all the same. Only the picture and the title is different, but these are all the same. Just the card gives you the unique special action of the role. There are actually a lot of player aids in this game. There's one on the board, and then there's this guy. I don't know if I can show you that, but there you go. So plus the rule book, which itself is not that long. So the fact that they gave like 30 player aids is quite nice. Anyhow, what I'm trying to show you is I have $4 here and 1 support token of the required 3 in the 1-player game. Remember that, $4. Now, after the die phase, the slave catcher phase, we go to the planning phase. So I have $4 to spend. I can buy, these are called conductor tokens. And I can buy in these because we're in period 2 now. This is a fundraising token. This gives you $1 for every slave you have in a green southern space. Here you all go, just to give you an idea of what the board looks like again. These are the green southern spaces. So I'd get $1 for each slave that is in it when I play that token. Not when you buy the token, but when you play it. In the planning phase, you are only allowed to acquire 2 tokens. Some of them are free, like the fundraising ones, but most of them, like these conductor ones and these support tokens, cost moolah. When you play a token like this, it says you can move 4 slaves, 1 space, 2 slaves, 2 spaces, 3 slaves, 1 space, 5 slaves, 1 space over here. So the higher level ones are better. Anyhow, I only have $4, so you'd think I can only buy 1. However, this says minus $1 conductor token cost during planning, which is now, and action phase. So actually, these ones cost me $2, which is all the money I have. So I'm going to buy 1 of these and 1 of these because I need to get 7 slaves into my plantations on this coming slave market phase, and I have 3 spaces open. So I got to move as many slaves as I can. Now this is the meat of the game right here. This is the action phase. In the action phase, you can play up to 2 tokens, no matter what they are. You can buy and resolve 1 abolitionist card. We'll get to those. You can use the benefit of your roll card, which I already did. And you can use the roll card's 1-time special ability. So at the bottom here, I've got a 1-time special ability. So I can move 2 slaves to New York right now and flip the card, which actually might not be a bad idea, but we'll get to that. Let's start off by moving slaves using our conductor tokens. After thinking about this quite a bit, I've decided what needs to be done. Now, there's a card in the row that says this. Slaves may not be moved into or out of northern blue cities using conductor tokens. It's in effect until removed from the queue. There we go. Kind of sucks. So I cannot move my slaves into or out of blue cities. Like this is not blue. That, into or out of, so that sucks. Right now I've got a whole bottleneck thing going on. I gotta get guys on the top into Canada. Here is why. So I'm gonna spend my 4 slaves, 1 action. This guy goes into Canada. That's 1 action. This guy moves here. That's 2 slaves. And I get $1 for my trouble. Now this slave catcher moves because I moved a slave into a spot on his track. This guy is going to move here. That's 3 actions. I get $1 more. This guy goes here. This guy goes here because he's on both tracks. And for my final trick, I'm going to move this guy. For my final action, I'm going to move a slave from here over here. That was my first token. Second token, 2 slaves, 2 spaces. So I discard this, and slave number 1 is going to come out of here. 1, 2. I get $1 for my trouble. And now this guy is moving back here, probably feeling frustrated. That's 1 action. You are allowed to jump over slaves in existing cities. You are not allowed to jump over slave catchers. And also, only in big cities can you have more than 1 slave. So for my second action, I am going to move this guy over here. Now, when you move through a city, nothing happens. You don't get the money, and the slave catcher isn't triggered. Only where you stop. So I will get $1 for my trouble. And blue guy goes back 1 towards the slave over there. Now, the final thing I can do on this turn, well, there's 2 more things I can do on this turn. One thing is I can do the effect, move 2 slaves, plantation slaves to New York with no effect. That is something I can do. But the final thing I can do is buy a card, and only 1 card. This is the Abolitionist queue. Every round through the Aegis style, this card, but in a 1 to 2 player game, these 2 cards will be discarded. Everything move over, and then cards from the period you're in will be filled in the empty spots. So what I'm thinking of doing is this card will cost me $3 to remove, but then I'll be able to move slaves into and out of northern blue cities, which is nice. However, that's the only card I can buy this turn. I can only buy 1 card this turn. This card I could buy now to trigger it early, but I don't want to. So let's go for Liberty Hill. Liberty Hill is always a good one. 2 slaves, 1 space each, and purchase a token at full cost. I now have $5. I got money from moving slaves, but I also got money because plus $1 during action phase. So I got my $1. So I'm going to spend $2 and take Liberty Hill and resolve it. $2, Liberty Hill. Now I get to move 2 slaves, 1 space, and purchase another token at full cost. So just for fun, let's take a fundraising token. Now I can't use it. I've already used 2 tokens, but I can use it in a future turn. So now I get to move 2 slaves, 1 space. The first slave I'll move is this guy because purple is way too comfortable in the west. I need to free up some space here. I need to get purple moving more to the east. So there, I get $1, and I move purple. For my second action, I am going to move this guy over here. That frees up a space over there, and then purple moves again, back here. And thus endeth the action phase. We now move on to the slave market phase. So this ship comes flying in, bringing along a new shipment of slaves, and these slaves are going to go into the plantation in all empty spots. But we still have 2 slaves, and there is no room for them. So unfortunately, they are going to be lost. The next part of the slave phase is we move everything down. We discard the old one. We move everything down. Flip over a new card. And then we fill that card up. Like so. And that ends the slave phase. The last phase, slave market phase. The last phase is what's called the lantern phase. So this lantern phase is going to be interesting. Here are the cards. We discard the 2 most rightmost. Now this one says, move 3 non-plantation slaves back to the plantations. So, and resolve when removed. So I get to choose the 3 slaves. However, they are going to be lost. So pretty much I want to choose 3 slaves that are in the way, right? So this slave, he doesn't trigger any slave catchers in that spot, so he is lost. And then, let's say this slave as well. And finally, now I don't want to remove this guy because if a slave goes up here, it's going to trigger that guy, he's going to come down. So we're stuck with that. Similarly, this one, move a guy into there, slave catcher, yellow guy coming down. Pretty much, I think this guy, because then I can move this guy up here, purple goes up and might be able to do something. Maybe not. I'm not really thinking so well. But that goes up there, and I now have 8 slaves lost and only 2 slaves in Canada. Now, I'm not sure. Maybe this card means the slaves just go back to the slave market card if you can't. It doesn't say. I haven't checked the rules. I might be wrong about that, but I think the golden rule where slaves, not enough room on the plantation, they get lost. Now what happens is we do this and this. Then we flip over 3 more cards. See, it's got purple. Now, only 1 opposition card is allowed to be revealed each lantern phase. If 2 are revealed, the second one is set aside. You keep flipping over cards until you get, mostly non-opposition cards, and then you would shuffle that set aside card back into the deck, which is actually a nice bit of, pro player luck mitigation. And that's really 1 turn of a game. This is a longish video. It's much longer than I wanted it to be. But the game each game takes me an hour. I have the expansion cards. I don't feel that you really need them. They're great, but I don't feel you really need them. They also make setup slightly fiddlier because you have to remove randomly remove cards. So that's nice for replayability, but again, you don't need those cards if that's what you're wondering. Buy the game and play it. This is, I love this game. Every time I play it, I just love it. I'm just enthralled by it. Like, what is my strategy going to be? Because a lot of it is so predictable. You have your slave catchers, and they just move, in reaction to you. Sure, you got that one die roll. Remember that way back when? But I mean, that just keeps the game fresh. That's all it does. It doesn't mess up your strategy at all. The cards, these opposition cards on the right here, these do mess it up quite a bit. Here, in effect until removed from the queue, move one less slave when using single movement conductor tokens. So 4 slaves 1 space. This one says 3 slaves 1 space if you use that token. That's pretty harsh. Some opposition cards, they don't let you buy them. You cannot buy them. So you're forced to have them to obey what they say until you manage to discard them from the queue. Some of them suck like that. Just the whole puzzle of it, buying those support tokens, trying to keep your plantations emptied. As you can see, it's very hard to keep them empty. They just keep filling up, and they keep filling up fast. The game scales with more players. In fact, I played Pandemic once, multiplayer at a meetup, and the whole time I was thinking, I just want to play this single player. It would be so much better. This is the first co-op game I really want to play multiplayer. Multiplayer, I just think strategizing with other people about this puzzle, not this luck fest, but this puzzle is just fascinating and can be such a great experience. Like I said, the game scales. This is if you have two people playing. This is if you have 3. This is if you have 4. There's also, each one of these has a challenging game. See that? Which gives you more slaves you need to free and less slaves lost each game. This is the normal side. So the game scales. The slave market cards scale. These are for 1 and 3 players. But, you also have cards, slave market cards that look like this for 4 players. This is for 2 players. But, I mean, this will give you more, 7 cards, right? 7 slave cards. These are not in the 1-player game. So every game there are 8 slave market cards that come out, and you have to beat the game before the 8th round. It's just, it's just such a great game. I edited out a lot of my thinking and pondering and meandering over what decisions to make, but I just love trying to make those decisions. I mean, trying to keep your plantations empty, getting your slaves to Canada is pretty easy. Just buy this game. Just buy it.